Hi everybody, welcome to this week's episode of Build with Stacky, where we talk to sort of sales leaders and sort of C-level experts in go-to-market about sort of what they're doing in the sales tech space to help teams better build revenue, better build pipeline, and make sense of the sort of chaos of the sales tech space. This week we have Laura Keith, CEO of Hive Perform, on the show. Hive Perform, a very good sort of enablement platform that we're excited about. Laura, great to have you on the show.
Thanks, James. Excited to be here.
Excellent, great stuff. So, obviously, it's easy for me to say we're excited about Hive Perform and some of the stuff you're doing. But do you want to just give people sort of maybe in simple terms what Hive Perform is and sort of maybe the problem that you're sort of looking to solve in modern sales?
Yeah, so we're looking to disrupt the old way of how enablement was previously done. So training traditionally in sales is done in a way where you identify a problem. So you might realize there's a conversion problem somewhere. You might realize that pricing isn't being discussed, and so then you design some training, some courses. That might be face to face, it might be digital. You then deliver it to everybody, assuming that everybody has the problem, and hope that post that training it sticks and that you make a change. And there may be some effectiveness in that, but what I think 2 years ago, really, with kind of AI and thinking about its possibilities, we saw the potential to really rethink enablement from a different angle. So we've got 10 years of looking at learning and development. So we own Hive Learning, which is a disruptive enterprise learning app, and saw this as an opportunity to really think about if we could flip enablement on its head and bring together RevOps and enablement to allow teams to firstly diagnose what the problem is. So, have I got a messaging problem? Have I got a skill problem? Have I got a process or methodology adherence problem in the team? And if I have, who has it? When's it happening? How's it happening? So, if we can diagnose in depth where your team is underperforming and then personalize the approach to helping those reps to improve, then we can help you improve things like your conversion rates with much more of a targeted approach across your funnel. So that's the kind of problem that Hive is looking to solve. And then we also obsess over the customer. So we think about it from the team perspective, but we're also looking at that angle of if your team are messaging everything perfectly, is your customer responding in the way that you expect? So instead of just putting everything onto the sellers and their performance, actually, has your product marketing does your product marketing need adjusting? Like, are the pain points that are being surfaced in a very fast pace of change market? Like, is all of that changing and shifting? And how can you quickly keep your finger on the pulse and connect those dots from marketing through to sellers so that you've got a really customer centric view on it all? So we're kind of taking more of a holistic view of enablement too.
Yeah, and I love that. Obviously, like I said, I think we're really excited about what you guys are doing. That pace of change that like we see in the market is just so quick now, and what I see you guys doing is, and correct me if this is not, I'm oversimplifying it maybe, but we went through a period over the last 5 years, maybe a bit longer, where people built enablement teams, do lots of coaching and upskilling, and they use tools like Gong, they use tools maybe like a Lego, etc. And then we had the RevOps teams also looking at the tech and the process and stuff, and they gave you two sides of what was going on, and then they have to like mash that together, or the sales leader or the SDR director has to like mash that together and work out, okay, so this is what the conversation insight's telling me and the coaching that the guys need. This is what RevOps telling me is happening within between stages, and these are conversion metrics. How do I now tie that up to actually improve everything? And you guys have found a way and provided a platform that pull that all into one place, which makes it more actionable and means that you can react probably to the whole buyer journey a lot faster, which means the upskilling and the coaching is going to have an impact on deals much faster than that RevOps and enablement team sitting separately. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So it is the marrying. Yeah, if you could marry RevOps and enablement and they had babies, it'd be Hive Perform.
Amazing. Love that. And like you do a lot of that by monitoring all the actual data and the actual activities that people are doing in their CRMs, as well as the call recordings, rather than just giving people lots of additional dashboards and give them actionable steps, right?
Yeah, so the key here is we we're plugged into your CRM and your call recording, and that could be, you don't have to have bought a really expensive Rev Intelligence tool or conversational tool. You could just be using transcripts from Zoom or Microsoft. From there, we understand what's happening across the pipeline, all the email interactions, plus all the conversations that you're having with the customer. So we've got that rich insight. What then's really key, and a bit of a differentiator for Hive, is to actually make sense of any of that, you need to build a robust framework to
Mm-hmm.
measure what good looks like. And so when we first started out, I reckon at least 70% of the sales leaders we spoke to, the question we asked was, oh, just plug in your sales framework and then we can measure against it. And I reckon about 70% didn't have it written down, recorded in enough depth that it was easy to quantify. And so the first thing Hive actually does is it assesses everything that's happening in the field and starts to pull together a playbook of these are the actions that are helping you close more effectively. This is how messaging's working. And so we get that context built up. And then from there, that context is really important to enable good quality coaching. So once you've got that framework there, you can start to automate the coaching, because there was two further problems that we then hit with customers. One is we were exploring solving with customers. One is, even when we identify those challenges with sellers,
Mm-hmm.
it's still hard and time consuming to coach. So you have sales managers who maybe haven't been given the skill to coach, and maybe struggle at it. And then timing is hard. You've got a big team of sellers, being able to find the right time to be able to jump in and do the coaching is incredibly hard. So we can automate that by giving the sellers the data, the frameworks, the information, so that they get instant feedback, they get instant understanding of what great looks like compared to what they're doing. Then actually we can empower the reps to learn quickly in the field, as well as just and then work on how the line managers support the coaching in and out of that. So that framework's really important as well, in terms of how it all connects the data in together.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so, like a lot of sales tools, and I guess going back to that traditional sort of, you have enablement here and you have RevOps over here, like a lot of that focused on sort of visibility, but then, and that can inform strategy. But as you say, that like, it's a timely thing, and that can be quite slow. Taking all that information, digesting it, working out then what does that mean for our strategy. And I see sort of Hive is now sitting in maybe sort of that execution layer, maybe between the strategy and actually helping people close deals. So again, it affects that speed, which affects revenue, and is obviously so important to all startups, scale ups, and any companies that have a big event, whether it be funding, IPOs, investment, whatever. Is that fair to say? You're focused on that execution layer and helping solve that execution gap?
Yes, yeah, very much so. We do play in strategy too. So the reports or the analysis that Hive produces usually sit in three areas. So the first area is, for a sales leader, can we help you be board ready? So if you're going into the boardroom and you've got a drop in conversion rates, from, I don't know, qualified to close, what's the why? Like, and you tend to feel or know that it might be something the team are doing, but getting that level of detail is incredibly hard. So we have the analysis, which is board ready and helps you to give the depth on the why and then what you're going to do to solve it. We then look at kind of month by month, what as the sales leader should you be focused on, where should you be iterating a strategy, and then the third set of analysis is looking at executions, like how are you actually supporting the reps to make the change in the field, which then closes that loop back around to, here's where I've identified the spot, the gap. that I'm reporting to the board. Here's how, on the other hand, I'm actually executing that change in the team, and then I can see that change and I report that change back in at board level. So it kind of closes that loop across strategy through to execution.
Amazing, and that's so valuable for anyone that has to go and report back to a board, right?
Yes.
Um, and obviously, so within all of that, and within the tool, I know there's like AI obviously plays a big part in, I guess, digesting all of that information, analyzing, feeding back. Um, how do you how is Hive using it, I guess, differently, and maybe like helping to automate maybe the coaching, guiding to reps, and is it doing that in real time, or how is that changing compared to competitors maybe?
Yeah, it's in real time. The main thing I think to understand about AI and how it's used is Hive's built AI native. So it's built from AI in the core of what we do.
Yeah,
And that framework that I talked about building previously, where we build a framework of what good looks like, that then guides the LLM or the AI to give you good quality feedback. So the more robust that structure is, the better the output in terms of it can understand the context. Therefore, I don't have to prompt, you don't have to spend hours prompting Hive. If you wanted to understand, how well are my team discussing pricing currently? And are they identifying the budget holder and having those conversations in the way that we expect? Normal platforms that are built not AI natively, you would have to prompt in every word that the rep may say, like budget holder, finance director, X, Y, and Z. So you'd have to know to preempt all that so that the LLM can then spot it and give you the feedback to coach on. Whereas Hive's built to understand that framework up front so that it gets the context of what it's talking about. So you don't have to do all of that prompting. You don't have to download transcripts and stick them into GPT and then hope that the analysis is robust enough. It's preempting all of that so that you can automate. So we're looking at how we automate those workflows for you, predict what the questions are that you need. And so that all comes into that playbook and framework that we're building. And the reason we focusing on that was the challenge that we see in sales teams, particularly now. So where kind of the only constant is change, and change management in sales teams is incredibly hard. So like you roll out the new playbook, you roll out the new messaging, and the moment you've done it, it's out of date. And so the effort to then
100%.
go back, adjust that language, you've launched a new feature, all of that is just a constant motion, which is expensive. Hence, I think you mentioned earlier, James, like previously, kind of last year, the year before, it was like build enablement teams to basically manage that change management process. What Hive's looking at doing is, can we actually automatically understand how's your messaging landing, where are the bits you're missing, and then auto suggest those changes to the playbook, make those changes. So product marketing managers manage the messaging part of the platform. You've missed this pain point, the customers are consistently talking about it, here's what I recommend you add in that's working. Yes, add in, phase this phrase out, and then it'll automatically keep rolling so that you don't get these kind of jerky big change management processes. So that's been a bit that AI can really spot and monitor and automate for us as well.
And I think that's such a good point on like the playbook. We see it all the time in the companies we work with. We often work with sort of startups who they've got beyond founder led sales, and they've built that initial sales team. They're getting momentum. They're slowly building, but then as they start to add new products, new features, as they grow in size, the company scales, their roadmap grows and progresses. Well, the playbook is just changing so quickly and I spent a full day doing this just last week with a CEO, going through all of their metrics, working out the playbook, the scale, what we're going to do for the next year, and you help automate and update that playbook consistently, which makes such a difference. And actually, I think that's something that's sort of nicely reflected maybe in your pricing. Your pricing is actually quite nicely based on, I guess, the scale of the team and how a company might scale. Um, So I was just looking at it before this call, and I think it really nicely reflects where a company is and maybe the size of the team, size of their ARR, and as their playbook's going to advance, that seems to be reflected in the pricing. I think it's actually a really nice model.
Oh, thank you. That's nice feedback. Yeah, we bumped into lots of founders that were going through the fourth rep problem. I don't know if you've heard of that phenomena before. I hadn't heard of it until last year. So for those that haven't heard of it, it's the kind of you kick off with your founder-led sales. You hire you kind of maybe your future CRO in. He's doing this. You're doing the selling. Then you bring in your first seller. He gets all the time and attention of the founders. And then it's the moment you bring your fourth rep in, you're starting to distance from the founders, you're starting to think about the systems of scale. You have to think about what the processes, the methodologies, the playbooks that work and that are going to be consistent. And so we started talking to lots of customers in that space, but didn't have huge budgets because they're just starting out, but also probably hadn't refined the framework yet, hadn't, they wanted to have a bit more flex in plugging something in and off they go. So yeah, we iterated our pricing to suit those founders to help them on that kind of starter part of their journey. And actually, we did some experimenting in the last 6 months where what we would normally do is plug in and analyze historical data. But with these companies, both actually founders, but also businesses that were launching a brand new product and a brand new market to a new set of customers, like we don't have historical data to build the framework off. So what we've then done is you plug in Hive and it actually builds your playbook on the fly. So as your seller starts selling and you have the kind of rough edges of messaging and a form of playbook, we then basically every week, every month, we'll iterate and feedback. Okay, so we essentially build it with you over that first quarter rather than and give you all that data and analysis on what's working so that you kind of get that really fast feedback loop with the customers. So that's been really fun to do, particularly as someone who's founded a business and grown it.
Yeah,
It was great to then be able to offer something at the right value, but also helps them solve that problem as they grow.
yeah, yeah, amazing, and it scales with them, right?
Yeah.
As their team grows, it can scale with them. So it's amazing. I think you're really onto something, and it's one of the better uses of AI in sales. You're helping to automate all like I often say, and you know this from having spoken to me a lot recently. It's just like AI and stuff should be used to get the right research, the right data, and the right insights to sales teams,
Mm.
so that then sales teams can get back to just speaking to people and following up and having more conversations. And I feel like that's what you've really solved for the enablement side. I think a lot of tools are still lagging behind and have can give you loads of good insight in coaching or can give you loads of insight, but then it's still a lot on the managers and stuff to work out how to use that insight to coach the team. So then get that to the team and then the team to practice and implement that to actually affect their conversations and with buyers and prospects. So from insight to actually having any impact on the sales cycle, a few weeks, sometimes longer, and you've really like shortened that loop massively. So I love seeing it. Um, what do you think maybe some of the bigger challenges you see for some of the sales teams over the next 2 or 3 years might be, sort of outside of what you're initially solving for right now?
Um, I think two of the biggest challenges we think about this year and maybe beyond, kind of more immediate one, I think is like how do you cut through the noise? So the first thing AI is able to do is create more faster. So create more content, more emails, more ways of personalizing, and so the trust in building a brand is really difficult, really challenging to do today. So how do you think about building trust through newer channels? I think partnerships are going to be incredibly important over this next year and beyond. So that's one. That's a challenge that we think about quite deeply. Can AI solve it, or is it that we'll flip back to more of a person? Is that where the human kind of comes to life a bit more, in terms of sales? Those humans that actually are equipped with the right data to deliver value to customers, are they the ones that are going to stand out much more? I would imagine so.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the second one I think is the CRM. It's like, is the CRM in its current form dead in the next year or two? Maybe not in enterprise because it'll
Interesting.
be slower to do it, but like it's a data recording place rather than delivering value. And I think that that's changing. I can already see HubSpot making some brilliant changes there. But they're going to have to evolve and change because being the data repository is no longer a value. So I can see a massive shift and change there, and sellers living in LLMs. So I see potentially a seller sitting in Claude or Copilot, whatever the version of the LLM is that you're using, and that LLM then plugged in via MCP to multiple source multiple sources of data, context being really critical, um, and being able to kind of move a lot quicker by what's the pain point they spoke about in the last call. How do I form that in with the framework and the messaging of the business? How do I then follow up really effectively? So I think MCP, LLMs, sellers sitting in a version of an LLM consistently, is maybe where we'll get to. Um, I don't know. What are your thoughts?
No, yeah, I think you're right. I think it's going to be, and it goes back to maybe one my previous point, and some of the things you've alluded to as to why you've built Hive Perform. Like, you want to use AI. AI means there's more out there, more is being created, more is being pushed out, and what that means internally for the sales team is how can I use AI to get more of the insights, more of the research, and act faster and stand out in my conversation. I know what I'm talking about because I have all the right information at my fingertips. I know how I think, I know how to add value to this potential customer. I know exactly what happened within your business over the last 6 months because I have all of this information and I've taken the time to look at it. Whereas, previously, 5 years ago, even 2 years ago, reps didn't have all that information at their fingertips and tools started to be created that could give them that information, but they still have to go read it and find it all and stuff like that. And so some did really, and that's when I think you start to see a split in sort of approaches to sales at times as well. Just on, I do loads of research and then go and speak to people versus, or just speak to more people and you'll get better at speaking to people. Probably of that latter train of thought. But now with ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, whichever one you're using, you don't really have an excuse for like not having a decent understanding of any conversation you're going into, and the people that are then going to start standing out are people who are using that, but also being able to have human conversations.
Yeah,
And it's why I think Hive Perform is also onto like something really good. You're taking all of that information, you're making what's in the CRM usable, you're making the call recordings, transcripts really usable and actually impact sort of business direction a lot quicker as well. So I think it's actually a really powerful tool, probably for C-level as much as the sales reps themselves.
yeah. It's interesting. I was just listening to you reflect there. One of the things I keep my eye on a lot is I think there's a lot of synergy between the sales industry and the health industry in terms of
Interesting.
AI. Yeah, AI unlocking, you know, understanding, we've already got things like Fitbits and Apple Watches. So I know how what my sleep looks like. I know how to eat more healthily. I know what exercise I've done, how many steps I've done, how many calories I've burned, what my heart rate's been. All this, that data and information is becoming available to me as an individual. So I don't need to necessarily go and find a PT. I can start to adjust, and you can start to see on the rings now, your your kind of vitals are showing you that you're starting to look a bit run down, get a good night's sleep now before it's too late.
Yeah,
I can see the synergies in a way of how do you have all that data and information as a seller now so that I can quickly adjust. I don't need to wait for someone to give me feedback or join a call. I can see like all the signals, all the signs, all the information there that allows me to do the right thing for the customer to help them to close. So yeah, I keep looking at what AI will do in the health industry and what it might do for sellers.
I think that's such a good example. I'm going to steal that, because then the next piece then, which I think will tell us which sellers are going to start to stand out, is the people who are most accountable.
Yes.
Because I mean, I used to use there's what's the app? There's an app which like you scan every barcode and it tells you the calories and stuff and meal plans and that type of stuff and
Oh,
fitness, my fitness pal or
My
whatever,
Fitness
something like
Pal.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And people wear whoops and they have all these things and there's all this stuff which we know we should do, which is better for us, like get a good night's sleep, um, drink less, eat healthy, blah, 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 whatever it might be. And now we have more of the data. It should drive more of those habits. And in some people, it really does impact those habits, and others, it doesn't have as big of an effect. So I wonder if that's going to start to then become the differentiator with salespeople. You
yeah,
know, if I give half my team all the same information and the same data, but their behavior doesn't change a lot, but I give it to the other half and they all like really start to use it all the time, I think that's where we'll start to see a bigger gap in performers, and the top performers will probably start to pull ahead even further.
mm,
Um, and I was actually just saying this to Saul, um, that the thing that makes top performers is often just like consistency and accountability. And that they are, because of that, or they had that early, they've become better salespeople than maybe some of their colleagues, and they've gotten better and better. But it's all bred out of like consistency, habit, and repeatability.
yeah. I'd add in growth mindset and ability to learn.
Yeah,
It's like those
yeah,
that are hungry for it will then take the time to learn and take the time to invest in themselves. That's where you'll see, I think, the development. Those that they might be consistent, but they're not changing. So I think it's the consistency of adaptation and the kind of learning and thirst for it. So yeah, yeah, no, totally agree.
yeah, amazing. Um, where can people go then to like learn more about Hive Perform, keep up with everything you're doing, Laura?
Well, I share a lot on LinkedIn about what I think and where I think the industry is going. So always following myself on LinkedIn and connecting. I'd love to have conversations with people too, hear what you're up to. We also have a website, which is www.hiveperform.com, which is consistently updated with latest articles and thought pieces around kind of AI and the future of selling. So yeah, either of those two channels are probably the best to find out what's going on.
Excellent. Well, look, great to have you on the show. I'm really excited about sort of how Hive Perform is going to continue to grow, continue to help sales teams, and partner with Stacky to help, I guess, upskill the sales market. Um, everyone, if you can like, subscribe, and follow us on YouTube. We release an episode every week with one of our partners. And yeah, visit Stacky for any sales tech, outbound sales process advice that you might need. Thanks very much, Laura. Great to have you on the show.
Cheers, James. Thank you.